After concert horror. This story goes back in early October. My friend and I from high school went to a concert in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The concert was over around midnight, I would say, and our hotel was just an 11-minute walk to and from the venue. Once we made it to the hotel room, we got ready for bed and talked about our favorite things that happened during the concert. We eventually fell asleep around 2:30 a.m. We were sleeping in the same bed as it was king-sized. The hotel room was a loft-looking room, big empty space with a high ceiling. My friend was sleeping closer to the door and I was sleeping closest to the window. I woke up to my friend moving around and she whispered to me that she was going to go get more water. I didn't think much of it at the moment, so I didn't reply and just kept my eyes closed. She gets out of the bed and starts walking across the hardwood floor to the hotel door, unlocks the deadbolt, opens the door and walks out. This made my eyes open and stare at the ceiling as I'm laying on my back, confused and thinking to myself, why did she leave the room to get water? At this moment, I look over to my left, and to my surprise, my friend is still laying there sleeping, curled up on her side, still facing away from me. I look back at the ceiling and thought to myself, I must have dreamt of her leaving. So I fall back asleep, still laying on my back. But maybe 10 minutes later, I am woken up once again to people talking right outside of our room. Not thinking too much, as hotels tend to be loud in the mornings, so I keep my eyes closed. Then I heard the door open and close, the deadbolt lock again, and shuffling of feet walking towards the bed until I feel the bed move like someone just got on top of it. I just barely open my eyes enough to see what's there without my eyes looking fully open, and there is this lanky, long, greasy-haired black figure hunched over my friend, just staring right at her. I froze, just watching it, refusing to move, and while looking at it, I started praying. Once the words, "Dear Lord," were said in my head, the figure snaps its head towards me with its hair whipping around so fast and starts crawling towards me. It was crawling so quick, but at the same time so slow. I closed my eyes as tight as I could and started praying harder and faster. Then, I felt a rush of heat for a split second and then instant relief. I opened my eyes and the thing was gone. Safe to say it was hard to fall asleep after that. Small town hauntings more common? So to start off, give some background information. I used to live in a small town, or small at the time, called Weatherford. It's a little west of Dallas-Fort Worth, and you likely wouldn't know where it was if there wasn't a decently known community college there. Point being, it was a small and fairly unpopulated town at the time that has been there since the late 1800s. I don't think I'd ever experienced any paranormally terrifying events outside of Weatherford except for one instance. There are multiple stories from when I lived in Weatherford, however, I'll go through them one at a time through different posts. So in this particular instance, I was about 11 or 12 at the time. I was home alone, and I was unaware I was alone. I was under the impression that my sister was still home. It turns out everyone else had gone somewhere, and I was by myself. The house was a mobile home, one of the ones you see on giant trucks split right in half vertically from the middle. There's a hallway from the dining room and kitchen that leads to 3 rooms, my room, my sister's room, and a bathroom right across the hall from me, as well as a hall closet. I was sitting in the living room, which was also right next to the hallway, just had a small doorway leading out to the dining room with no door, when I see a girl's shadow pass by the doorway with a giggle. I got up from the TV thinking my sister might want to play a game or something. Usually what we did because we grew up with no devices, thankfully. I get up and go to the doorway, seeing the shadow run towards my sister's room. I asked, "Do you want to play a game?" And all I heard was another laugh. I figured she wanted me to follow because this sort of behavior was normal when she already had the game set up, so I followed. I get to her room and there's just nobody there. I check her closet to see if she's hiding. Nobody. There's no other place to hide besides the closet. At this point, I was fairly freaked out, and I backed out of the room, calling her name to see where she was. I just shut her bedroom door and backed into the living room. I was a little on edge at this point, and it seemed like the smallest noise out of place worried me. I wasn't too sure what I saw earlier or if I even saw anything at all. After a little while of sitting in the living room, I heard another laugh coming from her room. I peeked around the corner and her door was still closed. I walked up to the door to listen in, and then the front door opened and in came my biological family, including my sister. I told her I thought she was in her room and she said she'd been gone all day. I don't believe that I told anyone from that family this story at all because it felt like it didn't happen at all, but if it didn't, why do I have such a vivid memory of it? The Man in the Fog. I never post anything on Reddit, but I have to share this story because it really affected me as a child. When I was about 12 or 13, I used to play a lot of video games with my best friend, and we often played shooters together. As you can imagine, it's easy to get frustrated, and at one point I ended up breaking my PlayStation controller. Since I didn't have a spare and couldn't continue playing, I told my friend that I had to stop. He said I could come over and borrow his second controller since he didn't live far away, just a short walk. I thought okay and told him I'd be over soon. So I grabbed my keys and started walking to his house. It was already dark, and since it was winter, it was snowing and very foggy. While walking, I had a strange feeling like I was being watched. I kept looking around but didn't see anyone. When I arrived at his place and picked up the controller, I saw through a window that a man was standing in the middle of the street. I pointed it out to my friend, and we both wondered who or what was standing there. It looked like a person, but we couldn't make out any details, just a silhouette. Eventually, we decided to go outside and see if the person needed help or if something was wrong. We stepped out and asked what was going on, but there was no response. The person just stared at us and then walked away. We were both confused and told his parents, but they just brushed it off, thinking we were imagining things because we played too many video games. After a while, I figured it was time to head home. Since we had played video games together for a while, I almost forgot about the strange encounter. But when I was walking back, I started to feel that same eerie sensation of being watched. I saw a few passers-by, but they all seemed normal, nothing strange. But just before I got home, I looked behind me one last time, and I saw that person again. This time standing behind a tree, staring at me. Then they started walking toward me, and eventually they began running. I could tell it was an older man, probably around 60, but I was surprised at how fast he was running. He was shouting something in a language I didn't understand, but he didn't seem happy. I ran for my life, clutching my keys, and tried to unlock my front door as fast as possible. When I got inside, I quickly glanced back, but the man was gone. I rushed to my room and immediately told my friend about what had just happened. He suggested I call the police, which I did. But since my description wasn't very detailed, the police took a report but didn't seem to take it too seriously. My parents were visibly shocked, but nothing ever came of it. In my village, 4 other people reported similar experiences, saying that someone was watching or following them. I was one of them, but no one was ever caught by the police. To this day, no one knows who this man is, whether he's just trying to scare people or if it's something more sinister. No one knows for sure, but everyone agrees that it seems to be a man around 60 years old. Beyond that, no one can give a detailed description. That day, I feared for my life. I've told many of my friends about this, and I've received mixed reactions. Some said it sounds like a spooky campfire story, while others believed me and were visibly scared. A few even told me they had experienced the exact same thing. Scary and potentially dangerous encounter with an Uber driver. Hi all, my friend and I just had a pretty terrifying encounter with an Uber driver and are shaken up by the event. We're visiting a pretty touristy city in a foreign country right now for the weekend and went to visit a winery not far from the city center. After finishing our wine, we called an Uber to get back to our hotel. The Uber driver, a woman, picks us up and upon entering the car calls us beautiful ladies. She doesn't speak very much English, but my friend can speak her native language, the language of the country we're visiting. As we're driving back toward the city, she first makes joking comments about us being drunk and telling us not to throw up in her car, which I assumed was all friendly banter because she was picking us up from a winery. The woman begins telling us about her life story, but then begins talking about how the mafia works in this particular neighborhood we were driving through and deals in human and drug trafficking. My friend was translating for me because I couldn't understand. She also kept calling us beautiful and beautiful ladies. She then asks us if she can pick up some mail on the way and that it'll be a short stop. We assumed it would be along the route, and so we say yes. She then begins going far off route in the complete opposite direction of where we were meant to go. She also kept extending the amount of time she claimed it would take to pick up this mail, and also said it was actually at her apartment. My friend and I were growing nervous. The driver then approached an apartment building and started driving toward the entrance to a gated underground garage. My friend told her to stop and that we would wait outside, and then Uber driver said, "Don't worry, I'm a mother." and it'll only be a minute. We thankfully were able to unlock the door, canceled the ride, and ran toward the main road of the city. We then mapped our way back to where we were supposed to be, and it ended up being about a 45-minute walk from where we were. I don't know if this woman truly had malicious intent, but her words, combined with trying to drive us into her alleged apartment parking garage, was scary.